Alright, we're back here. Technology and I are not getting along today. First, the previous YouTube video didn't load up properly, so I had to redo it for you here, and then my battery died as I was talking to you. So where was I? So here with the core shadow there, right? Getting a nice range, and now look at how much lighter this is starting to look just by being pinched in between these two darker ones. But you can find a lot of really what seem like or look like really beautiful, impressive drawings online, and it's part of what makes them look so great or so compelling is the really beautiful rendering and the tonal differences, right? But a lot of them, if you look more closely, they're actually missing they're almost just like cheap parlor tricks of really highly technical work, but there's actually not an understanding of why it's turning around, so there'll be missing parts, but or elements, but you'll see some really nice kind of shading. And so I guess that's almost like half the battle is getting a nice value range. And if you blend it really well, you can get a really good, at first glance product there without it, you have to really look at it to start to see the flaws or what's not correct about it. But anyway, we don't need to talk about that. Let's talk about how to make it correct. So again here, look at how bright this is looking now. I was going to say look how bright it's getting, but obviously it's not getting any brighter. I've not touched it. I've just been darkening the areas around it, so it is by default, by contrast I should say, starting to look brighter. So again, you'll want to, this is an issue many of you had on that first one we did, or that first one you did as homework. But so I want to again start to, now that I'm doing a smaller one here, I'll use the blending stick, so I'm not bringing in too much of the really dark 8B from the cast shadow, but again working around it. Being a little bit more delicate here because I want you to see what I'm thinking or doing. So I'm really layering this up where if you're a little bit more comfortable or confident, you can do it in fewer passes, get the tonal relationships right in fewer passes, but I want you to kind of see how to build this up and start to build your own confidence here. Because I want to make that core shadow a little bit darker, so come back again now that I've blended it and knock down some of the contrasts here. I add some of it back into it. Again, I'm making lines describing the way the surface is curving here. And so I'll do a little tiny bit down here. I'm feathering it, I'm very lightly touching it, but again, I want to start to, even with the graphite, you can start to blend it or smooth out that, right? You see there's such a clear edge between these two. That's not what we want. So to make it easier, I can add just a little tiny bit around the edges there, as I was showing in that earlier step, and then when I blend it, of course, I can smooth that out even more, but it'll help if it's not such a big jump from one to the other. So that's why I put a little bit of tone in there to begin with. so here we're starting to get a decent illusion here. This can be a little bit darker. And I'm not going to go through, partly because this is, depending on how you want to count, at least the third video I've made, but here, technically this is the fourth one that my phone just died. I had to restart the video here, but so I've had all about all the sphere demoing I want to do for today, but I want to give you guys a good kind of the approach to it. So like I said, I won't make this completed, you know, something I put in my portfolio or anything like that, but just to give you a sense. So again, look at how light that still is looking down there, right? Even though I've not made it any lighter. I've just been darkening the areas around it. So another thing we talked a little bit about is contour edges. So you can see here there's not really that many lines I put. Now you saw when I built this in the previous part 1, I was using my 4H to sketch out the contours and give myself a guide to work from. But as I've been working and adding in tone, those have been starting to disappear or become just part of the tone of the area next to it. Right, so now that I've warned against, just putting a hard outline around something like this, right? Because that'll flatten it out. Look in the room around you. Nothing has a black outline going around it. Everything just has an edge where the object is stopping. So there are edges, but there are not outlines. Now that isn't to say you can't make use of outlines. You just don't want to put with the same line weight going all the way around it. So even in here, I might add a little bit of a contour right there, really just to sharpen that edge between the sphere and the cast shadow. Again, we'll talk about this idea throughout the semester, the idea of line weight and all that. But even up here, let me get my 4H. Right, there's a little bit of line there, but I'm actually going to put a little bit of tone behind it so that it'll make that highlight stand out even more, because again, that is just the same tone as the paper, is the same tone as the highlight there. So if I put tone behind it, behind the sphere in the negative space, just like you saw with the reflected light, it's going to make the highlight appear brighter just because it's not competing or on the same level as the white of the page. So that's why in this assignment I asked you to put a tone behind your sphere, because it'll again help add to the illusion. It puts it in a space. It'll help you kind of render things a little bit better and more cleanly. But anyway, so I might want to just sharpen parts of the sphere, particularly in the shadow bits there, with just a little bit of a contour, just defining that edge a little bit more. But again, I'm not doing it all the way around, and I'm not doing it with the same line weight, right? Where this is darker than that one is. I use my finger here, even though it's a bit too big for this little bit, but it's because I know the Tortolon has a dark coating on it now, and I just didn't want to take the time to clean it off and do all that for you. So, but like I said, I wanted to just show you here the basic technique for blending and shading, and you can watch the other video where I talk about what's happening with the light, why we have this core shadow and things like that, right? I think by now you get the idea, and when we have class later this week, you can, if you have questions, can answer them for you during the Zoom session. Right, so you can keep going here, or I could keep going here and keep strengthening the core shadow and really building up the tones here. And you know, again, I'm just using a few pencils here to work on this, but again, you can make it even easier on yourself or give yourself more tools by having a wider range of pencils. You know, it's going for the whole spectrum from 6H to 8B. Every step along the way you can get a different tone from, right? But yeah, I had you make those gradations using 9 values, so that's what you need to have in your drawing here. But so you can see, you can just keep going, and I could blend it more and all that type of stuff. But I think here this, so especially for those who wanted to see a little bit of how to blend or how to shade without, you know, looking like this, and then, you know, having all that. So even notice as I was shading across it, right, I wasn't scribbling, I wasn't doing that type of thing. I was doing as much more controlled, or even when I was doing it faster, I might have been doing this type of thing, but I'm still making essentially parallel lines and just doing it in a really controlled way. It takes, I guess, some practice to do that a little bit, but again, I'm not just trying to quickly knock in the tone. I can do that, but then I'm going to have all those lines in there that I then have to try to blend out. But if you just slow down a little bit, you can, you know, build it up and get nice light gradations there. And again, you can see how nice that kneaded eraser is. I can go and just lighten up that contour ever so slightly as I was drawing next to it, because it got a little bit too dark there. So again, very useful tool for those who don't have one yet. A kneaded eraser is highly recommended and very useful. But anyway, I think you get the idea here. If you have questions, we can talk about them in class, and we can do some, can do live demos, or maybe I can just verbally answer your questions. But I think you're getting the idea here. So, hope this was helpful. I'll see you all in a few days, and look forward to seeing the drawings you make. Thanks.